Hello, guys. I am Shane Davis, 20-year comic book veteran. I'm here with you with Yanzi Lin, and we are talking about CBR going down as they are a shill comic book media site. Before we get into it, please look down below, hit like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Now, this is going to be a year of drastic change in basically the comic market that you used to know, and it's going to start becoming something that looks very weak and malnutritioned vessel of itself. Okay, so CBR is obviously they went through and they laid off major layoffs, okay, overhaul due to cultural and performance issues. We're going to delve into that, but before we do want to remind you this has happened recently, and that was with IDW, correct?
So for people who do not remember, IDW recently had to be delisted from the New York Stock Exchange because they were consistently performing below $1. So when that happened, they also had to let go of a lot of C-level executives. And as a result, you can't just fire all these people and leave a vacuum in the hierarchy, right? So what happened was that a lot of lower ranking employees actually moved up into those positions. We have done some videos on those. We'll talk more about why people are actually firing the top level execs. So what's happening with CBR is that they lost their editor-in-chief. They also lost 2 senior executives, and they're owned by this company called Valnet Inc. And they're calling this thing major structural changes intended to change the culture of the site as a whole. Now, hang on a minute. This is a site called CBR, which stands for Comic Book Resource. So how are they going to change exactly while sticking to the branding?
Well, that's a bit of a issue. For people that don't know, if you keep up with comic book news like we do, you oftentimes kind of start avoiding sites like CBR and used to Newsarama. These used to be the go-to sites to kind of figure out what was happening at Marvel and Comics and DC Comics and Image and other publishers. Get yourself a little preview, maybe some articles from the creative team, get jazzed up, and maybe be sold on buying a book. But with the type of books that Marvel and DC have been publishing, my theory is more and more people have been going to YouTube to get direct, real information. Now, these are pay-for-play type sites, meaning Marvel and DC are paying for advertisements there. And because of that, they don't really get negative reviews on things, and the more they pay as a company for the banner advertisements and things like that, or previews of books or exclusive content, money goes hand in hand with those articles. And obviously, if you're paying them, they're not going to really critique the product. So what's happened here is kind of a mainstream poisoning of the well. So you're looking at a comic book website that used to be the bee's knees. This is where you went to read comic book news, and it's going under. Why is that? Because one, people are going to YouTube like you are right now watching this video, but also quite simply, there's less and less interest in comic books, in American comic books. The sales are bad. CBR has been doing nothing, whether they're being paid to do it or not. They've been participating in the most divisive articles for the fandom. Recently, CBR had a what made sense, what the comic book industry needs to go back to doing. And it was basically a 10 things to do, back to basics thing. And it was like a breath of fresh air to most people, because it's like, wow, you're actually talking common sense for once.
Let's not forget, though, the moment they wrote the article, people are saying, now you're parroting Comicsgate talking points. How dare you? You're obviously an alt-right site. And maybe that's what they're trying to do. We have to change the culture of the site. We must continue saying everything is fine. Sunshines and rainbows are all that's happening in the comic book world.
But this is interesting in a way, because for one main reason, Marvel and DC have been doing the most woke content they can with their heroes. And we're talking about race swapping. We're talking about changing sexualities of characters that have, in some cases, like 80 plus years or 80 years of legacy. And everybody's bisexual, all of this, whether you agree with it or not, it's very divisive. So then the mechanism is, the foundation's there. DC Comics pays them to write about it. That's how the word gets out on the street. It gets clicks. The more clicks these things get, the more advertising revenue they actually generate. The more clicks they get, more money they make. But they're also making money from DC Comics. Now, here's a theory I want to throw out to everybody. What if in doing all of this, they were getting money from DC Comics and they are writing about these things, obviously, because they are comic book news, right? DC Comics doing this, but at the same time, they're poisoning the people that would even go there, along with DC Comics poisoning the people that buy their comics. Now, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, you have to understand they're owned by big mega corporation parent companies. They can afford that. Can CBR afford the apathy of fandom? I don't think so. They depend on fandom. They depend on those clicks to get them advertising dollars. Now, when there's an article that's coming out bisexual Superman, they're going to get a spike in clicks. But if nobody's invested into that series, hello, Tom Taylor, it got canceled. I don't care what you say. People, if they're not engaged in that book and they don't care about what's happening on issue 3 or issue 10 and so on and so forth, then they have nothing to write about. And even if they are writing about it, nobody's clicking on it because there's no real development, a conflict or story or narrative that's anybody cares about. It was just a fire sale. That's it. People click that one day to read about Superman being gay, and then they're done. That's it. So can the site sustain off that? And it's kind of interesting because you're basically looking at what is a hired mercenary, not even real journalism, getting shot. So they lop off all these top execs, right? On a downside. Why do you lop off people at the top? They didn't lose these people. They got rid of these people. Why do they lop these off? Because they're trying to stop him, to put a tourniquet on it. They're bleeding out revenue because these guys had a salary based off of when the site was performing better.
Now, we're not saying that IDW and CBR are the same thing because one is obviously a news company and one is a publishing company. But so IDW layouts here, we're going to look at some numbers that might give you an idea why they're getting rid of all the top level people. So for example here, IDW CEO was paid $410,000 per year. That's a lot of money for a company that's been in the red for a very long time. And the CFO is paid $250,000 a year. Now, once you get rid of these people, straight away it's like, wow, there's a big pot of money left over. You can use that money to promote your lower level employees up into the same position, and you can claim, well, yeah, we're going through a rough patch, we can't afford to pay you as much as the previous guy, but if you do well.
Right. And this is funny in a weird way, this mechanism, because the people up under doesn't necessarily mean they're going to run the company better. They're going to basically have the same job duties with less money, and they know they could be part of a sinking ship. Now, these media sites are basically becoming like they are a dinosaur. Nobody really believes that these are real reviews or real criticisms or real journalism on any type of material coming out right now. As far as publishing goes, I do understand the pay to play thing. I'm not saying it's great, but I do understand that it's built in and baked into like why Marvel Comics or DC Comics would actually give this information out. If they have a big Spider-Man book, and this was the issue with the death of Miss Marvel, that was a leak. Marvel would have controlled that to a site like CBR or Newsarama or somebody like that, or what used to be Newsarama, Gamer Radar. They would control that through capital, through actually paying people to control the narrative. The images of that snuck out. Marvel has no control over it. Before you know it, Nick Lowe's having to turn his comments off on his Twitter. He's getting threats and whatnot, and everybody's running up and down the street talking about how horrible of an idea it was to kill this character off in the Spider-Man book. So Marvel's facing great criticism. So I understand from a publisher's perspective, but this is the type of mechanism that eventually is going to catch up with a site like CBR or Newsarama, the shill media dividing fandom. And in a way, I hate saying CBR had their hand in there in dividing fandom, but they kind of did. They took the money and they wrote about very divisive things over and over again. And they were an echo of what Marvel and DC were doing with their comic book line. And I really want to point out, these guys are downstream. IDW, CBR, we're looking at what is going to be catastrophic changes in the American comic book industry. You know, publishers are leaving Diamond. I mean, you really have to look at the big picture here. There are so many moving parts right now, and they're all up under Marvel and DC. IDW, Image leaving Diamond, things like CBR, they're all happening they're in sync with one another. And you have to be like, well, what's actually happening here? Is this the collapse of the American comic book industry? I'm not saying it is, but I'm not saying it ain't either. You know, there's a really interesting tempo happening here. But anyways, if you guys will hit like, subscribe, ring the bell for notification. Also want to point out, Extend Level Up sign up is up. We're going to offer you guys secret tiers with a trading card and a discount if you sign up. There are 2 books in this: Extend Level Up and Extend Respawn. One's drawn by me, the other is going to be drawn by 4 other artists. As each character enters a different game, a new artist will handle those art chores for this awesome cosmetic experience, this beautiful comic book. If you guys will check out this trailer, hit like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We'll catch you guys again with another video.